Hey Gary, welcome to yet another video. I'm having a nice beer. I've had a few nice beers actually. This one is fun. I'll show you the label because I know for a fact you cannot get this anywhere outside of Wisconsin. Actually, it's New Glarus. The Yokel. It's a seasonal lager. It's delightful. But yeah, they literally can't sell that stuff outside of Wisconsin. A bar in Minneapolis, the state next door, was trucking some in for their patrons, and somebody found out, and they went and took all their beer because you're not supposed to cross state lines with it, especially not for commercial purposes. So you'll have to come and visit if you want to enjoy this, and it's worth the trip. Anyway, since we last spoke, I went to a rally, a political rally for Bernie Sanders in Madison. Since he was only 2.5 hours away, I decided to go check it out. I think the easiest way for me to kind of include that, instead of trying to edit into this video a bunch of stuff, I'm just going to put a link in the description to a folder that contains some of the pictures that I took while I was there. It was pretty amazing in the fact that it was 10,000 people showed up to hear a 1-hour stump speech, and everybody who showed up registered with the campaign to be a future donor and a future volunteer in a state that has a Republican governor running for president here this week, Scott Walker, who's terrible in a whole lot of ways I could outline, but I don't have that much time. So I mean, it's a really deep, thoughtful campaign play that has a lot of organization and thought behind it, which is what all of his events so far seem to have been. Oh, and that's Fred watching me make this. My three-legged barn cat who won a fight with a coyote. Obviously, because he's still here. He's a good guy. Lazy fucker, though. He's a cat. Should be pretty self-explanatory. In response to your video from the last whatever, the Bible, man, let's not get into too much on the Bible. I could be here all night. Some of my favorite ridiculous things that people think they understand about the Bible but don't are actually more popular than that. I had to re-educate my mom and my grandma on the story behind the premise and the dictate of let he who is without sin cast the first stone, because most people think of that story of there's this woman, she's going to be stoned for adultery, and Jesus was like, you ain't that, don't do it, because you suck too, kinda, right? And we all suck, so just forgive her. And that's not that story at all. If you read it, it's actually like fucking biblical CSI. Because what happens is he shows up and they're about to stone her, and he's like, hey, well, okay, this is in accordance with law and stuff. So where's the guy that she was cheating on her husband with? We gotta stone him too. And the mob was like, I don't know. It's like, oh, where's the husband? Because he should throw the first rock, really. Because, I mean, it's kind of like his woman who's screwing around. We couldn't find him. But we still want to stone her. And, that's when he steps in and is like, no, I don't think this is such a good idea. It's not really we all screw up and you should forgive people as much as it is don't kill people without a proper chain of evidence. If you read back a couple chapters before the whole let he who is without sin cast the first stone line, it just obliterates the whole message of that parable from what people traditionally take it as, which is one of my favorites. But I mean, even more than that, the Bible is... Oh, bye Fred. He's going to get into my beer now. So that's what he wants. But, it's such a crapshoot, because, translation screwed up the Bible so heavily throughout times. It's one of the only, like, sacred, literal, holy texts that only recently became a literal text that only idiots believe should be taken literally. But, like, it's the only one where it's not in one language. Like, the holy version of the Talmud and the Quran are in Arabic and Hebrew. And you have to learn those languages if you want to, like, read directly from the holy book. Christianity is the only one who was like, well, we wrote it in Greek, but then we changed it to Latin, and then Latin turned into French, Italian, Spanish, English, and it made a bunch of loops around to get there. And now, we got Peruvian and Portuguese and, whatever else. That's all the same book, right? Nah, it's garbage. Like, I took Latin in college, and for 2 years because Chinese was full, and it seemed interesting. My dad did not approve of that logic. But it wasn't about him. It was about Latin. And the one thing we did every year, both years rather, was we would translate bits of the Christmas story from the Latin Bible into English directly, because it's something people are generally familiar with in the first place, which makes it a lot easier for students to translate it. And Church Latin is a little bit easier than actual Roman Latin, which also makes it a little easier. It's just kind of a fun thing to do before break. And even that, like, the meaning of basic things from the Bible that we all take for granted changes so dramatically from one-step direct translation compared to what we have now that it's just absurd to me to even really talk about the Bible as a holy book in the grand scheme of things, like, as it is now, I guess. I mean, if there had been a one-language version handed down through the centuries, maybe, but, like, as it is now, it's such a crapshoot, it's ridiculous. The great example is the passage in the Christmas story where the angel says, like, peace on earth and goodwill to all men. Like, huzzah, Jesus is born. When you direct translate that from Latin to English, what it actually says is peace on earth to all men of goodwill. Which is just like, peace on earth if you're not a douchebag. And that's, again, a little change there. And just the grammar makes a huge difference on the meaning. Because we don't care. Fuck it. English is how Jesus talked, I guess. But yeah, so I could go on. I did like a 10-page paper on how you shouldn't take the Bible literally for these various reasons. Like, a whole series of contradictions, some of them very basic, that if you take it literally, like, you just straight up can't do it. Like, the Sermon on the Mount, in one gospel, Jesus does the sermon from the top of the hill, and in another gospel, he walks to the bottom of the hill and then gives the sermon. So, like, literally, you can't literally take that literally because they're different. It's as simple as that, but people still do it. So, the Bible. So yeah, I suppose what I would be interested to hear, not having thought of this at all in advance, because I like to kind of impromptu everything with you a little bit and not plan at all, because A, drinking, and 2, fuck it. What I would be curious to hear from you about next would be about kind of what's going on in the music scene where you're at. You're out in Seattle on the West Coast. So I'm curious to know, like, what's the art scene like out there? What's the music scene? How are things different culturally out there from the Midwest, the big suck of death and nothing where we came from? See you then.